All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Iron Age Maidens. I'm Katie Room from Periapsis Press, and today I have an all-female panel on to discuss reading and indie publishing from a woman's perspective. David and I recently did a video called Do Men Read, where we discussed the male reader demographic and kind of how they've been ostracized by tradpub. And it inspired some interest in my Gilded. Bridget actually suggested doing something like this to hear how women fit into the Iron Age trend and just get some ideas about the female demographic in general. Just a reminder for people who are new or haven't visited for a while. When I say Iron Age, I'm referring to the age in general and not saying that everyone on the panel necessarily considers themselves Iron Age or ascribes to all of the expectations of that movement. And if you want to know more about like how I define Iron Age, I did a video called What is Iron Age? And I discussed it in the context of like other literary movements. Before we start, I'm going to say hi to the chat because you all have been waiting for us, and I apologize. I have a lot of guests today, so we were navigating that and making sure everyone had tech all lined up. Tim O'Burnham.
For women, we should automatically be able to pop in 20 minutes late, and you shouldn't complain at all.
Michael Kane, Patrick, Doug Wise, hi. William Jeffrey Rankin. Thank you guys for coming. Kaylena Radcliff, Resonant One, Rawl, Nyancy. I can't remember how to say that. Okay. You guys are already busy making jokes at my expense. Thank you. I appreciate it. Makes me feel important. Okay. Really quick, I'm going to introduce the people that we will have on tonight, and then I'll say hi to the people who are present. So Jagi Lamplighter, who's the author of the Books of Unexpected Enlightenment, among others. Leslee Sheu, author of Kumasagi. Bridget BAMBo Boncher. She is a member of my Gilded and wife of MD Boncher, who is the author of the Dream Nebula series, which I've also reviewed. C.S. Johnson, author of Divine Space Pirates, also among others. Other people we'll be having on, Fiannawolf. She's a commentator in the indie sphere as well as author of the Uplift Protocol. Anne, who is currently right next to me here. She's the host of Politically Incorrect Knitters. Kaylena Radcliff, author of the Elmness Chronicles, which I've reviewed. Paula Richey may pop in, we'll see. Author of Penance, as well as the Soulbound comic. Had planned to have R.H. Snow on, author of Watcher of the Damned, but she can't make it due to an unexpected personal event. So perhaps we'll have her on another time if you guys like this and would like more.
Who doesn't like Ladies' Night?
Like, wow, everyone else is an author. I'm just glad to be included, guys.
Well, don't feel bad. I'm not I'm the wife of an author. Does that?
I am also the wife of an author. So
I got that going for me either. Dang it.
You're armed, so.
Well, I could say hanging out at writers' conferences is how I landed my husband. So I could give some suggestions there on finding your crowd in unique places.
How much that applies in this case.
Resonant One is saying BAMBo is so much more than just the wife of.
Well, let's see. His bookkeeper, his promoter, his artist, his frontline editor, his beta reader, his story. The list goes on and on and on.
Yes, the many hats of a wife, right? So let's see who actually is a quote unquote maiden and who's a matron, because several of us are married.
I'm a matron.
I'm a matron.
Same,
I'm married, so we can talk about that. I was gonna say, if you're ever, it's like the whole reading thing. It would be great, like murder mystery thing, if you didn't have a happy marriage. So back up.
So, what is a woman? I knew I'd get Anne to laugh.
That used to be a simple question.
Where's that clip from Kindergarten Cop? So
we will not actually be exploring that question in particular. We're just gonna we're all female adult women.
human females.
Right, yes.
Like those
That's the other
those born with the
maybe we
the-
should get a card made that has XX chromosome card.
one.
That's it. Those born without Y chromosomes.
I know a gal, she's an artist, and she kind of got in trouble for, pro-female art, and she has a hat out, and a shirt, female to the bone with the X eyes.
Nice. I've got to get that.
Yeah, she's a lot of fun. The famous artist Bertie Rose, if you're interested in looking her up.
Check it. I have to make a note.
I'll post the links for us, Katie.
For what?
I'll post the link if you can.
Oh,
Man.
yeah.
One second.
We're women. We care. We share.
Yeah, that's right. Something.
Something.
Sounds good.
All right. So, oops. Do you guys want to start by just kind of talking about generally what you would consider your demographic? How that is the same or different from maybe what tradpub is expecting when they think of the female reader? Anybody can just jump in.
I know for me growing up, I said I was never one that was attracted to what was traditionally considered literature for women, books for women. I mean, I was either reading the classics and I was not reading Jane Austen or any of the popular girly style classics. I was digging out Treasure Island. I was reading Three Musketeers. I wanted the action adventure. I pitched Nancy Drew to the wayside when I discovered the Hardy Boys in 4th grade. Just like Nancy Drew was boring, and I would read the super mysteries just because I was dying for something else to do with the Hardy Boys themselves, but always rolled my eyes every time Nancy Drew had to horn in. So I graduated from there, but I was reading Louis L'Amour Westerns. I was doing those kind of novels. I was grabbing anything I could. I was not heading to the section that was supposed to be what was aimed for girls or women. I'm still that way. I've got a little better. I've actually got a few romances under my belt, but I don't look for the drama. I want that adventure. I want that fun. I want that what would traditionally be considered pulp. That appeals to me. And that sort of story.
I think knowing one's demographics is a little difficult. I write a story about a teenage 13-year-old girl, and I think most of my readers are grown men. And I don't think it's because necessarily they're the ideal readers. I just think it's who I can reach, obviously it appeals to, adults as well as teens, but it being indie, it's hard to reach the teens. I haven't figured out how to reach them. So my little 13-year-old girl is mainly got grown guys reading about her, but
it's kind of like Xena Warrior Princess. Like, who's really watching this show? It's like, yeah, that's one for the girls. You're like, is it though? Is it really?
Well, I mean, I'm not thinking that it's not appealing to girls so much as just happened to reach. I know a lot of guys, so that's who I reached.
Yeah, I think it's funny because I think back to my favorite books and my favorite stories that I like to read. Very few of them had a female protagonist. I was going for the guys. I wanted the heroes. I wanted that old fashioned swashbuckling heroes. Now, granted, my little 13-year-old self envisioned, running right beside Robin Hood or the Hardy Brothers or whatever, tagging along. But I never at any point that I remember growing up thinking, oh man, I need to see a woman being able to do this. I want to see a female. No, I wanted the heroes. I wanted the guys.
I don't remember as a kid caring whether the main character was a boy or a girl.
Yeah,
I mean,
it never crossed my mind.
I mean, I was just as happy to read Dr. Dolittle, which is about a grown man, as I was to read, about assistant pig keepers, or I mean, it was the story, not the fullness of it.
The Chronicles of Prydain was like my intro to fantasy, I think. You said the assistant pig keeper. I thought of that right away.
I was just with my sons the other day that whenever I was sick and stayed home from school, I reread Book of Three.
It's seriously a crime that the second book was adapted and not the first.
Well, let me tell you guys a little bit about that. So once upon a time, for a very short time, I worked for an anime magazine, and I got to interview Frank and Ollie, who were two of the 9 old men of Disney. If you don't know the history, Disney, there was a strike, and 9 guys stayed, and they became the backbone of Disney. And these two were two, so they were the guys who did like Bambi and stuff. They were the ones that got Disney to get the Black Cauldron, but it got held up and they retired before it was done.
Oh.
So they were sad about it because they would have done it real well,
Yeah.
And, they had retired, and the people who took over didn't really do it justice.
Didn't have the vision.
Oh. But that was a shame.
Crimes.
Those books have so much active dialogue. You think someone would just pick them up and make them into a cartoon or something, They seem perfect for it. I'm really surprised more of them haven't been done.
Yeah.
Sometimes it seems like one bad showing seems to ruin them for years.
Yeah.
It's just like
my bet. Revisit them now. That they seem to be really looking for series now to do. Maybe someone will pick them up. They would be so good.
Yeah, it's like my late best friend was a huge Dragonlance fan. And she liked the original Weiss and Hickman trilogy. Those original characters are the ones she followed. And was it, I want to say maybe 12, 14 years ago now, something like that. They came out with a cartoon. They were going to do something Dragonlance on media. And she was so stoked. She was thrilled to death. She counted down the days, got the DVD, sat down and watched it. And she was so upset because they took what was equivalent of about 500-page novels, shoved them all together into one 90-minute cartoon. And it did not work. And it bombed so bad that I'm just now hearing rumors that they're considering doing something with Dragonlance in the next year or two.
Which we know will be.
That the worldwide success of the live action One Piece will have a period where it becomes in fad to make things accurate to the books instead of crazy. They think the fact they tried, not that close, but they tried to make it kind of close to the original. Yeah. Which is why it did well.
Well, they ought to have learned that lesson with Harry Potter, because they adapted very carefully, very closely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But then there were like 3 or 4 immediately after trying to capture that same magic and didn't, because they didn't stick to the books.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Well, it's just Hollywood still does not understand that fans, for the most part, they want to see their book, their characters. How many books does Hollywood? And it's always because we want our vision, or they'll claim that people don't really want to see the same thing just word for word. They want to see something new and revitalized, or this book redone for this audience. They've done this for years. They cannot do.
But they think that they're just taking this idea and they're going to kind of make it better. And they don't seem to take into account is it's doing well because it's hitting certain notes.
Yeah.
And if we don't hit those notes, it's not going to do well.
Yeah. It's like, I understand.
It's so simple, but
It's like, I understand you have to, you've got to shrink. If you're taking a book, even if it's just a simple 150-page book, to get everything that happens in that book into a screenplay, I understand that you have to cut and pare and edit. It's just like, I know when Lord of the Rings trilogy came out,
Sure.
it's the group that I call the Tolkien canon police. They hate if it was not written by J.R.R. Tolkien, then it's considered to be blasphemous above all blasphemy, and they despised the movies beyond all measure. And some of the biggest complaints that I've seen was because he left out the whole Tom Bombadil scene. That was left out, and they were. And I'm going,
"You're left it out." He said that they might film it later. I mean, he actually just said, "We're going to leave this out."
Yeah, and I get why. It's like, if you look at the whole story, how does that have to play with the whole rest of the Fellowship of the Ring? I'm not even talking about the whole trilogy. I mean, it's this nice little section that happens, and then it has nothing else to do with the rest of the story. So, well, if you're looking for something to cut and you're trying to get time constraints in, that makes sense.
I've thought for years that the miniseries is a much better format than the movie for books. Short stories, like Philip K. Dick short story makes a good movie. Books really need something longer. Who knows? Maybe this age of Netflix and Amazon doing movies will be good for books.
Yeah, we'll see when they find their legs.
Because I'm not a Wheel of Time fan, but I've got a friend of mine who has been trying his best to get me to read Wheel of Time for years, and he was not approving of that TV series. So I don't have any, since I know nothing about it, I can't make a commentary one way or the other.
Yeah, I couldn't make it through that book when I first picked it up.
Yeah, I read the first one.
Yeah, I grabbed it again, but who knows when I'll get to it, right? I got indies to read. I want to hear from Leslee and from CJ and about the original question. Because I know CJ in particular, you have written romances. And so I'm interested to hear if you had similar experiences growing up where you weren't so interested in that, or if you had a different experience.
I have like the weirdest amalgamation of experiences, because I read some of my mother's like romance novels like starting in 6th grade. That was probably a mistake. But they had really pretty covers. So I was like, okay, I want to read
really
this. It's
jacked
pretty.
dudes.
Oh
I
my.
get it.
Yes. But I also love literary fiction. So, and I have my teaching degree, and I was a teacher for a while. So hopefully none of my students have found me. The nice thing about that, I guess, is that you have this really like healthy keto mix with like all this candy bar stuff, and like that's pretty much where I put my stuff. I live in the world of in-betweens with my writing. So the dystopian future, I needed an outlet for the 2016 election. And I was like, what do I want to do? I want to get in a spaceship and go circling around the earth and not worry about this. Perfect. Here you go. Also, we should annex Canada. I am seriously considering doing a sequel trilogy to it, just so I can say, oh, we've added Mexico too. So.
Good idea. All of America is America. That should be North, South. We'll bring it all in.
Yes, well, I have to say there are a lot of things about that series in particular that I was like, I'm going to throw in this and this and this because these are all my favorite things. So.
Nice.
So you'll find a lot of my work is like theme driven, like literary fiction, and then I try to make it palpable with all the fun stuff. So I'm like that mom that puts the vegetables in the cake and makes you eat it and tells you nothing's wrong with it.
No, it's hidden. It's hidden. You're not supposed to be able to know that they're there.
Yeah.
You can tell, Mom. You can totally tell.
Why put the like zucchini in it anyways?
Well, I like the idea that like if you go back and you read it twice, you'll be like, oh, I didn't notice that the first time. Oh, that's really cool. I didn't notice that. So I think that's probably the biggest criticism I have of like traditional publishers is like, yeah, somebody wrote this so that you would read it once and you would never think of it again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's not built to last. So my stuff is built to last.
Nice. Yeah.
I used to work for New York publisher briefly, and I think that they didn't.
Audio died.
They weren't attempting not to have good stuff in it. They just they get what they get, you know.
Give me one sec.
Yep. A consumable product.
I mean, it depends on the publisher, obviously. I worked for a small specialty science fiction publisher that was trying to publish high quality stuff. So maybe my experience was not the norm. But you know, I think partly, you know, a lot of what comes out traditionally is not that they're saying we only want this. It's just that they don't know how to find something better.
I love that.
I love romance myself. I you know, I know that I think it's a tendency to look down on it, but in fact, I very much agree with a podcaster that I like who really loves Pride and Prejudice, and she said when she studied it in college, it was all these articles and these research about how Jane Austen wasn't actually writing romance. It was, you know, she was trying to do social commentary, and she said one day she woke up and she went, well, she studied it. She realized the romance was really fundamental to the book. And she said, why are people putting romance down? Why do we all mock it? Why do we all make people feel bad if they like it? I mean, isn't it actually one of the most important things in the universe? That's where people come from, you know? People
that was something that got me with the whole trend in the early oddies to the whole dystopian, tear apart the culture thing. So they got the whole anti-hero thing going, which drives me crazy anyway. I mean, I don't mind a couple anti-heroes, but when you make everybody an anti-hero. Yeah. But one of the biggest thing they wanted to tear apart too was this whole white hat idea of, you know, the good guy getting the girl at the end. And I'm going, they wanted to poo-poo that. And like it was something terrible. And I go, you know, I want good, happy endings. The life's bad enough as it is. I read to see things that do work and the good guy does win. Now, I don't want him to have a cakewalk. I said, you know, shoot him, blow him up, force him to crawl across the desert on his knees, hands and knees. You know, no, don't just hand her to him. But you know, I like it when they get together in the end.
Don't just hand her to him.
Where indie books tend to.
I tell my husband all the time, if you don't suffer, it doesn't count.
They tend to thrive is that I think there's more of an they don't have to be pushed around by a fad, you know. They don't have to go, oh, we're not going to have any happy endings, or oh, we're not going to have any heroes, or every, you know. Yeah. They're just good books out there. The main problem is just how to find them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
My least favorite genre of literature or movies or storytelling at all is, you know, the real fantasy element of this is that there are good people out there who want to do good things.
Yeah.
And you find it everywhere. That's like, oh, actually, all of these characters are trash. And you're like, all of them? Yes, all of them. Even the guy you want to root for. They're bad. Nobody is ever happy. Everybody dies miserably. And there's no redeeming qualities to this story. It's not even a morality tale. So
I can't that concept of you can't tell really the good guy from the bad guy anymore.
Yeah.
Or the good girl. That drives me insane these days. I go, I don't want to sit here and watch a movie for 2 hours and go, I don't know who I'm supposed to be rooting for when I get to the end of the story. Or the whole trope of every bad guy's gotta have a sob story to explain why they are, but they're not really bad. It's just society pushed them this way.
I think when they did that to the Grinch is when it like reached the limit. I kind of thought it was interesting before that. I reached that point. I'm like, no, sometimes people are the bad guys, you know.
It's like the same best friend, my late best friend, who was my roommate for 11 years before I got married. We were roommates. She was the one person in my life I could find that had the same kind of quirkish bent that I did. And she got into, what was it, Disney's Ever After, that TV show that was on for a while.
Oh, you mean Once Upon a Time.
Yeah, and we only watched maybe the first 3 seasons, and I'm glad I got out of it when I found out what happened later. But as that show was going on, I mean, they were giving every single villain had a sob story.
Yeah.
And I go, it was starting to drive me nuts. The only one that didn't have a sob story was Peter Pan. They made Peter Pan a bad guy. And he was a bad guy because he wanted to be a bad guy. And it really wasn't any, mommy was mean to me as a kid or somebody picked on me as a kid. There wasn't any, he was the only one.
It really bugs me that they take the woman who calls upon all the powers of hell and they try to make it like the little nice thing is the bad guy and she's a sob story. Yeah. I mean, it reaches a point where you're like, come on, I'm not buying it.
And Maleficent was one of the most fantastic bad guys Disney ever created.
Right.
Yeah, particularly for female antagonists. Yeah.
I mean, her and the wicked stepmother from Cinderella. I mean, these were really fantastic villainous bad guys. It took a lot to, you felt accomplishment on behalf of the hero when they defeated those.
To quote Maleficent, they are disgraced to the powers of evil.
Yes.
Not to mention the character design, man. They're like, remake them nice later, but you won't get Maleficent with the sort of green orb above her as she melts into nothing.
And the voice acting.
Cool every time.
Yeah.
The voices are such a big part of those two characters as well. It all goes together.
Yeah.
I think there's just a whole movement throughout the entire mainstream genre to just make stories bad. Make bad guys good, make good guys bad, make romances not happen. And I think the big draw of the indie books is that we don't do that. We still have good stories. We still have, I'm not saying that every indie book is, one way or another. Some people, that's the vision they have, falls into one of those categories. But you can find books that have heroines or heroes or romance or action. And, not everything has to, something could be a tragedy, but a tragedy is a story that is kind of uplifting in a way about a good tragedy that just is entirely lacking from a story where people die for no reason.
Yeah. No, one particular series that was ever completed will not be mentioned, right? I refused to watch this series. I didn't care how popular it was. I would not watch it. As soon as I found out that the only person that I had any interest in following was killed the first half of the book, I said, nope. I will not go any further with this series. I'm not going yet.
I actually read the first book of Game of Thrones for a class, and it was because it was a class on Tolkien, and people were saying he was Tolkien for adults, and that was like the worst downgrade, right? Like, started out the semester reading Tolkien and everything Tolkien, and then having these rich discussions about everything, and then towards the end of the semester to read A Song of Ice and Fire, and everyone's just like,
I didn't even touch the book. I didn't even touch the book. It was the TV series came out. Everybody was huge. They were all going, "Oh, you're a Tolkien fan. You'll love this show." So I do like I usually do. I go wiki it. I go find the wiki, or find the Wikipedia entry and read the synopsis of the story, and that's all. I read this and I go, "Nope, I'm out. Nope."
Have any of you read Game of Kings by Dorothy Dunn?
I haven't heard that one.
No.
So I recommend them. They're written some time ago. They're not fantasy, but they've got like this, might as well be a fantasy hero, Scotsman as the main character. But I actually rather liked the Game of Thrones because I thought, oh my gosh, he's doing Game of Kings with magic. And one of the things that stood out to me when I read Game of Kings was there's a character I really liked who died, and there's a little footnote that says he actually died in this battle because he was And so I liked the fact that it had that feeling. It was like history with magic. But history with magic still has a kind of heroism to it. In fact, Game of Kings, the guy is like an over-the-top, utterly absolute hero, And the more I read of it, the less that was there. So I never did watch the TV show, even though I really liked the series at first. I just felt like it didn't know where it was going.
I think I made a lot of people mad when I said Game of Thrones ending the way it did was appropriate for the series, because it's kind of like trying to mirror the best of Tolkien while being its exact opposite at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, it's Tolkien for nihilists, not Tolkien for adults.
That's a good way of putting it. That's a very good way of putting it.
Just yesterday, my husband came upon a headline that said, George R.R. Martin discusses where Tolkien got it wrong.
Yes.
And he and our first reaction was outrage. And then we looked at each other and we're like, that could be clickbait. He might not actually have said that. The guy who wrote the article. So we're going to give him the benefit of the doubt.
I think there's a big difference between what is popular and what is classic. Yeah. That even, I would say, with the Game of Thrones TV series, everybody was watching it. Everybody. And I had people like, oh, you're going to love this. You like fantasy and other stuff. And I'm like, no. Like, no, really. And I was fooled by The Witcher. That sucked too. Sorry. Not sorry. Hated it. But now everyone's like, no, you should watch it. And now it's been a couple of years. And I mean, okay, maybe it does have more lasting power than I think. I'm biased because I'm not into it. But the TV series has been going on a couple of years. I guess they're doing House of the Dragon and that's doing okay. I don't think it's going to be a long-term thing. Maybe I'll be wrong. I'll admit it. But
that's just, it's like that's what was getting me going. Because I try to support my husband with his books, and he's trying to write more toward a male demographic, but it's not that it just appeals to men, but it's just, he recently got a review in the last 5 months about one of his books that came out. And they told him it's going to fail, flat out, because you're not writing to women. 80% of the market is to women, and this book isn't anywhere near appealing to women. And I'm sitting, and it's a guy who's telling him this, who's supposedly an insider in the industry, and telling he had to change his cover and change his books, and I'm sitting here scratching my head, going, I'm a woman, and I enjoyed the book, and Katie has read the books, so she can tell you she enjoyed the books, and I'm just. This was the advice that he was given from somebody that was in the industry. And I'm going, yeah, and this is why he's self-publishing these books.
Well, this is why
keep in mind that almost every really good book has several stories like that. Mm-hmm. Almost every book that's really good, that's a classic, it has several stories of someone telling the author, you've got to change this. It's not going to sell.
Yeah.
Tolkien, Harry Potter, so on one hand, sometimes people have good, worthwhile insights. On the other hand, sometimes you just have to smile and say thanks and go on with what you're doing, because
it's just, it gets me that there's a certain narrow female demographic that likes certain things and that do like the romances and the fairy tale retellings and all those little cutesy warm things, and they think that because those are the ones that are selling big or whatever, that's what all women want. And I go, whatever. I thought this was supposed to be the day and age of diversity. Where's the diverse? This is the most least diverse period I've ever seen when it comes to this sort of thing.
Yeah, that's kind of why I wanted to have this talk, because I think that is the common wisdom from tradpub that men don't read enough to bother writing for them. And
that's why Larry Correa doesn't sell. Oh, wait.
Yeah. And women read one particular kind of thing, where that is not the case in the indie sphere, from my experience. And so I was interested to hear from you guys if you had similar experiences. Leslie, do you want to jump in with anything? I feel like we haven't heard from you much.
I like to listen. So I forgot the original question.
Who's your audience? I remembered it.
Oh gosh.
What would you say your demographic is? Like you as a reader, or like who you're writing for? Either way.
Reader or writer. Okay. As a reader, I'm sort of the same, as an early reader, the same meaning I also didn't really care if it was a male or female protagonist. I probably started with Little House on the Prairie, you know, the whole series, but then I was reading the Chronicles of Friday and stuff like that, which is more of a male protagonist, I guess. And it just went on from there. Just you know, whatever's a good story, right? Whatever draws you in. And I didn't really feel the need to identify in a demographic way with the main character. I still don't really feel that way. I read books that are all different types of characters and situations, and you know, if it's a good story, it's gonna draw me in. I don't really know what my demographic is for my books. Well, there is a love story that sort of features pretty prominently. So I guess if the conventional wisdom is that women would like that sort of story more, maybe you know, women would like the series more, because there some parts of the story that's definitely carrying the plot is, you know, will they or won't they kind of thing. But it's not a traditional romance like a, you know, there's no like explicit, you know, it doesn't get into that sort of thing. It's more like a love story as part of the story, but it's not like a traditional romance in that way. But
and I do think it's funny because they'll say that men, they'll, if it's got any kind of romance in it, oh well, the men won't be interested in that. And I've read a lot of books written by men that were written for men, like the Louis L'Amour books. There was romance there. It wasn't the whole center plot of everything about it. It wasn't constantly getting into, oh, she thought this and her heart was fluttering about. Now that wasn't there, but there was still a romance. There was still romance there. Men can enjoy a good romance.
Oh yeah, I mean, I know 2 male indie authors who have told me explicitly that they like a little bit of romance in the story. Maybe not that's the story, but a little bit of just something, you know, that there's a little in there. Is this, I don't know, side plot or whatever you say.
Every story needs a Jim and a Pam, right?
Oh, I was just thinking, I remember having a conversation with my boss, and he was talking about different comic books and movies and stuff. And it was like this sort of personal revelation in my mind, like, this guy likes revenge romances. Like, he loves The Crow. He loves the I'm gonna go avenge my woman like story. Like, just down the line, it was, wow,
Did he realize that? Did he realize
I don't know that he
theme?
realized that, and I didn't feel that I could be like, well, you have to have a soft spot for these stories, huh? You like
I've discussed this with a number of men, and the theory we have is that men like romances, but male romances tend to be, I'm gonna go off and show I'm worthy of Deja's Thors. You know, they're like, they still like the relationship, but in the women romances tend to be about the woman's emotional reaction, and the male ones tend to be about the men going out and doing an adventure and proving they're worthy. You know, and that's something our culture really looks down on, but a lot of old adventure stories are like that. A lot of guys would like to be able to do that kind of thing. It's actually quite romantic, you know.
And it's not denigrating to the women either in the stories. A lot of times you could have a good, strong woman. How many cowboy western stories where you had a good, strong female that was right there supporting? She didn't have to always be the fawning, feigning flower.
Right,
Some of my
had
favorite
a shotgun, and she was the widow on the farm or whatever. You know,
I grew up watching Big Valley reruns. And as a little girl, my favorite was Jared Barkley. But as I became an adult, went back and started watching them again, I realized my favorite character is Victoria Barkley. That's a nice, strong female character who didn't have to lord it over her the male protagonist. She could hold her own. She was still feminine. She didn't denigrate her sons. She didn't have to overpower her sons. They were good, strong men, but you know, she proved that she could be a mother of good, strong men, and she was a strong character herself. And I said, you know, I come to enjoy that character. That's the kind of character. That's the kind of female characters I want to see. I don't want to see girl power, I don't want to see a woman out there who says, everything a man can do, I can do better. I hate those kind of female characters. I don't tear the men down in your efforts to build yourself up. Show what you can do within your own limits.
Yeah.
I mean, to a certain
I really
degree-
hate it when people do that with the father trope too.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I have to have a bad father. And it's like every writer today is some angry feminist lesbian at heart, you know. So I didn't have a great relationship with my dad when I was younger. And if not for the grace of God, I can understand where that comes, you know, like where that path leads. And I don't have to go down it myself. But that's part of the reason for my comic book. I made sure that the main character had a good dad. I was like, yes, he needs a good father figure. I'm tired of the, you know, angry father thing.
Or the stupid father. Not every man father out there is what is it, Homer Simpson. You know, there are good dads out there, very good dads out there.
Oh my
When
gosh.
I will say, like, when it comes to the women thing, like in my comic too, what I like to see women overcoming in kind of like a weird, healthy sort of way is I like them overcoming their trauma. Like I see this a lot in my work is like you have a lot of problems growing up and you know, I like literature as this like teaching device of how you can get through it and stuff. So I try to keep that in mind when I'm writing, but I have a lot of female characters that are like, there's something that they've lost or that they're like some part of their world is broken. And I like them trying to fix it. It's like a personal mystery box, only, you know, it's a girl one. So J.J. Abrams isn't allowed to touch it.
Yeah, it's like I got ideas to write, but if I ever get the main one going, that's nearest to my heart is just that kind of story. It's this the guy character and how he grows into being the dad that he is, but his life he's definitely got lots of stuff to overcome.
And like for the romance part, like my husband reads some stuff. He doesn't read my work, but
Mine doesn't either.
yeah, well, he said it would be weird because I've more or less admitted, I'm like, I'm taking this aspect of your personality, I'm putting it in here.
Oh, okay.
You're like, this is a little too personal. I'm sorry.
And all those conversations that we've had, I've tweaked it to where I'm the winner.
Yeah, you know, I was gonna say, you know, I make my husband listen to me read what I write, but if I was doing that, I might not.
No, I have a lot of George Costanza moments too, where it's like I thought of the perfect comeback 2 years later. So I'm gonna put that
I
in.
think it's a good thing to mind, but yeah, I can see why you might not want to read it to him, you know.
Yeah, well,
If it was my house, we would definitely start the argument again. And who wants that, you know?
well, we've kind of agreed, and just we both really like anime a lot, and I'm like anime and manga a lot, and there are only a few that we really agree on. And yeah, so but we like romance when it's done well. We like action when it's purposeful and meaningful, and it's not a filler episode.
Yeah, but I do think that's a big problem with the movement period is this attitude that this is what women have. And I think this is really degraded not just literature, but it's also television shows, movies. Is they've wanted to push men out the door completely because they got this idea of this is what a woman wants to read, and since they're the ones that are buying all the books and they're not paying a bit of attention to what really stands the test of time. And so a lot of stuff that's getting pushed today is all about an agenda and a message that they want to woo women toward instead of what women really want, I guess. And so my husband is an author, and we've been trying to learn how to market his books, and we've been going out in person for the last year to different shows and different cons and talking to people. And there are a lot of guys who do want to read. There are. They might want to, but it's hard for them to find things. And then we've also, one thing we've noticed is they're more toward the audiobooks and the graphic novels than they really are the big thick. What I hear about Brandon Sanderson, which I've never touched one of his books, but I hear stories about his being like that big.
They're true.
Hey guys, we've got a couple of people in the wings looking to switch out. Is anybody
I can
willing
go.
to?
Yeah,
You know,
feel
I
free to
it
boot
was
me.
fun to be here, but I had something else they wanted me to do at home, so I'd be happy to duck out. Thank
Okay.
you so much for having me on. Let me one last comment, and then I'll go.
Yeah, please.
I was just gonna say, you think they would look at manga and see how much of that is guys? I mean, the best-selling manga in the universe is, a story about pirates and adventure. It starts out with something called Romance Dawn. That's One Piece, and it's got action and adventure, and one of the best things about it is the boys act like boys and the girls act like girls.
Yeah.
The women worry like women, and the male characters grin when they get to fight, and the author is clever, is broad enough to do both, and so because of the manga, the Japanese light novels, which are not pictures, they're just novels, are also doing really well. Well, they also have drama and action, so maybe we're losing the guys because we're not producing anything they want to read.
Mhm.
You know?
That was my argument with this one person who gave my husband that review. I'm going, maybe the reason why you don't have men in the market is because you've thrown them out to the side. You're not even attempting to give them something that they would like to have.
And as you say, I mean, a lot of these things women also like them. So anyway, well, thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming.
It was nice meeting you.
Take care. Thanks, all of
Nice
you.
speaking.
Yes.
And you guys should totally check out Jagi's books. The Books of Unexpected Enlightenment is the series that I have reviewed a couple on my website. So I definitely recommend that one.
I actually wanted to tell her I quoted her in my so I wrote a book on writing and I quoted her in it. I forgot to tell her. So if she's still listening, I quoted you.
She's also been doing indie stuff, a lot longer than probably most of the people in our scene, especially like the Iron Age group, it tends to be newer. So she gives good advice and she knows a bit of her stuff. Hey, Kaylena.
Hey,
How are you?
I'm all right. How are you doing?
Good.
How's everybody else?
Good.
Good conversation.
And I'm going to kick you too. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for coming.
Yeah,
Did you want to
definitely.
say anything? Any last comment?
Woohoo. Witcher still sucks.
That's as much as I can say. Do you want to comment on Michael F. Caine's Anne's favorite genre is romance that focuses on lockpicking?
Michael, no, it's not. No, if there was more romance that was had well-developed characters that also featured lockpicking, maybe I'd go for it then. Lack of well-developed female characters in the lockpicking genre, huge disappointment.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah,
My
definitely.
husband actually did buy me a set of lockpicks so I could use them, and I can't
Nice.
use them. I think that on some level proves I'm a woman.
Hello.
Hey.
Hello. Yes. Guess what? All the air quote romances that are basically put front and center for little old women's like me, they're all selfish, narcissistic douchebags. Like Spencer from Skyward. Brandon Sanderson actually knows how to write female characters that are entertaining and lovely, but no, that thing is the center stage star. No.
That's kind of how I felt about Nancy Drew. And it's like, and they each iteration of Nancy Drew they make, she gets worse and worse and worse. And I'm going, give me Frank and Joe Hardy any day. They're out having fun and having a blast and going all over the place. And she's over here with her own little narcissistic worldview. And the older she gets, the worse she gets.
And I'm finding lately that guys are writing more tolerable female characters than other women. I have to go to like people who started before 2010 in some cases, so I don't get inundated with man with boobs with side shave cut that does better than all man zug zug.
Yeah.
Those aren't good characters.
The rude woman is strong woman trope is I'm so done.
The classic example that's been paraded before us this year was She-Hulk. I said I didn't watch the show. I just saw the clips, but this is the most disgusting person. I would want nothing to do with her whatsoever. And she's supposed to be the hero, and she's out here denigrating every man on earth and somehow making and the whole trope where the woman never has to. It's like she's always instantly good at everything. Never has to really learn. The Marvel Captain Marvel movies that came out is a classic example of that. That's just. What lesson is that really teaching? It's not
and
teaching
they get
girls.
It wrong. It's Superman and Doc Savage and all 007, all the competent guy characters. They're not competent with everything. They're highly skilled in certain sectors, but they have a side cast that augments their shortcomings.
I think it's also something that's only think about what lesson are you actually trying to you claim that you're trying to give little girls and young teenage girls something to emulate, to show them that they can reach their dreams and they can meet their goals. But when you don't show the character actually growing and building and learning from their mistakes and making mistakes, what are you teaching these girls? You're not teaching them how to work and achieve their goals. You're just teaching them how to be these little narcissists that thinks the whole world owes them something.
Well, you're setting them up for failure too, which is my big point. I think about like culture in general today is that we can't I like romances because it's very relationship oriented, and I think a lot of people don't have good relationships today. Like I could joke about my husband, and stuff, but I love him, and he's always usually more right than I am, and I'll be the first to admit it. I don't think, and I had a bad relationship with my dad growing up, but we've gotten a lot better in the last 10 years. So maybe I just had an extended teenage year.
Well, and fiction is one of those places that you can explore that kind of a different experience than what you have, right? And you can have that like with romance, right?
Character growth.
Right, where you can sort of see how somebody else takes those steps, and you go to towards a better relationship, towards growth as a person, and you can begin to envision it for yourself in a way that's maybe a little more tangible than a self-help book.
I envision myself launching Spencer into a black hole where she cannot escape.
I think that's part of the problem with stuff like Captain Marvel and the Mary Sues is they don't need anybody, and that's not how people actually work. People need other people. So.
Agreed.
Since we're sort of talking in the context of female characters in particular, we had a couple of questions on Twitter from some of the authors who follow me, mostly men, who are interested in hearing what we do want to see from female characters. Jonathan Sugar said, what does a woman want to see from female characters in fantasy settings, like beauty, strength, competence, etc.? ? And then Wilderness Researcher asked, where could male indie writers improve most in the characterization of female characters?
Big thing. With Mystical Emerald Man, the female lead is thankful to be rescued.
Oh,
appreciation.
Sure.
Yay!
I was gonna say, I think
when I think about women characters, I can categorize them according to what is sunlight, these very delicate women that add this beautiful, enlightening warmth to your life. And then all the girl bosses are just lasers that just bore right through you.
Steamroll you.
Yeah, I just think it's important. Men know women in their lives, women know men, and we're not one-dimensional. And I think that's a big problem that I see just across the board with any kind of character. And even, you guys were talking about the superheroes, the Miss Marvel and stuff, and they're so one-dimensional, and that's not what people are like. I mean,
And that's not fair to Superman or Doc
Yeah.
Savage. They're competent and they are homegrown heroism, and they aren't one-dimensional. They're not boring. They're just not cathartic. That's also the United States' problem, where they're so overboard on cathartic. Oh, something's got to change. Got to have some emotional movement. And this is like, no, you don't always have to have that.
Well, I think you can have it, but it has to be in like with stakes that you understand and can like grasp. So, like,
And most of them make cathartic assholes, though. It's like, go on a different track, but a lot of them are narcissistic assholes themselves, so they want to feel better. So they throw up on all their work, and that's all you get.
I agree the power fantasy movement has to die. So nobody really wants to go.
I think worldview has a lot to do with it too, though. Like, I think a lot of these, the way that people write characters is a reflection of, where they're getting their hope from. The way that I think modern entertainment a lot of times writes is like the only way to fix the world is by being this particular kind of person. But if you're a Christian and you look at it from a Christian worldview and you recognize people are complex, people are, they have weaknesses in their nature. And if their journey is coming to meet God in a sense, or rejecting him, that makes the character so much more believable. At least that's the way that I've read a lot of fiction that's resonated with me, is that these are characters who are having an experience one way or another with God.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even like in Captain Marvel's case, like her climactic moment in the movie is when she's like, I'm Carol. And like, that's not going to appeal to anybody really, because you might have that moment where it's like, oh yeah, I just need to find myself. But then you kind of realize throughout the whole film that she's a bit of a mess, and it's like, that's her, the thing that she's been searching for and the thing that she's suffered and journeyed for all this time. It's not going to hold up very well for very long for other people. So I actually like the idea that like there's more, like with God, you have somebody that's like pointing to something greater, and that's more important than like that you can both follow, that you don't necessarily have to root your entire identity in your own experiences, because your own experiences could be easily corrupted.
Mm-hmm. I think my answer for them as a reader would be, what am I looking for in female characters and how they could portray their female characters, is for them to look at the women that they look up to in their lives. Who are the women that you look up to, and what is your ideal? What is it you need a woman to be? Because a woman was created to be a helpmeet, to be a complement. She wasn't created to dominate. She wasn't created to be a doormat. She was created there to fill in, your weaknesses, and characters that do that well. I think of the female characters I grew up loving. The frontier woman, the woman who was strong enough that she could, if she had to, she would stand there and she'd load the pistol while her husband was firing away at the outlaws or the Indians circling their house, on the homestead. She was out there helping him put the farm in, the field in. She was out there. She was skinning and field dressing that deer if she had to. If she was doing what she had to.
In a dress.
In a dress. But she wasn't trying to lord over her husband. She was trying to help him. We're partnership. We're working together. And she had her weaknesses and her moments that she broke down. So it's like, give me a realistic portrayal of what a person is and what a woman is. But for the men and guys to go, look, what's the kind of woman that you're looking for? What woman would support you and be there for you? That is one gripe I have now, going back and looking some of the Louis L'Amour books that I read and I loved. The common trope in a Western was always this: the woman she's anti-gun, don't you go out and get involved, just kind of be the peacemaker, just back down, never stand up. I'm going, I get that, of course, you don't want your husband walking. Nobody would want I'll take it back. Some of the Viking women used to in the past, throw their husbands and their menfolk into extremely dangerous situations. But I go, not every woman has that viewpoint. There's several. It's like, I'm telling my husband, I've got an idea that he keeps telling me he wants me to eventually, if I could ever get the story going, I'd actually like to write it. And that's one thing I want to put in that story. I go, I want to portray a husband and a wife in the story where the wife, he might be the gunslinger sheriff of the town. So yeah, she knows that every day he goes to work, he may not come back. But there's a lot of good women out there who have husbands, who have jobs like that, who support their husbands. They're proud of their husbands. They know what their husbands are facing, and they're there to try to support the soldiers' wives, policemen's wives, firefighters' wives who stay at home every day, who know their husband walks out that door, they may not come back, but they're doing what they can to support their husbands. They're proud of their husbands. They're not trying to guilt him into changing jobs or constantly talking him down. They're supporting him. So again, I want to read females that are like that. I don't want to read the vapid, self-centered, the guy should be here to serve me kind of characters. Show me some realism. Give me women that I could aspire to be like.
Mm-hmm.
Anita Blake must die.
One of my pet peeves is when authors show married characters fighting, and the reason is that it irritates me how, and it's probably perfectly realistic, right? Like how women behave during arguments. And then you come away from that and you as a reader have sided with one of them. So if, for example, most of the time in a book, looking at the arguments and the responses, I come away siding with the husband. Because 10-1, the woman is being overly emotional, using tactics like guilt and bringing in like things that don't have anything to do with it. And when you're not in the moment, like if it was a like a scene in a TV show, it would be so fast and you wouldn't think about it. You would just, but having it all laid out neatly in black and white is that to then have the husband feeling guilty about the way he treated her or whatever. It's like, no, you're fine. She's the one at fault here.
And it is rather frustrating because they always portray women as being that way. All women are always going to give the overly emotional response. Again, not every woman is overly emotional.
Right.
My husband will tell you that's not typically how I react to any situation.
Well, and I don't want to, right? Even if I come out of an argument like that, that's not how I want to be, and it's not the kind of female character I would aspire to be like, right? So
it's not really a likable female character.
Yeah.
I think it's one thing we're really there's a really a big dearth for in fiction that I would like to see the indie movement maybe build upon, is you don't see a lot of stories that deal with established couples who've been there together. And it's always the beginning of the romance. You always see the puppy love, young love. I'm falling in love with her in the end, or these unrealistic, we fell in love and 2 days later we're getting married kind of stories. But very, very rarely do you see stories of a healthy relationship where husband and wife have been together 5, 10, 15, 20 years. Let's get some more Incredibles, where you've got a husband and wife who are supporting each other. You don't have those kind of stories. If you do have a story about a couple who've been together 10, 15, 20 years, then they're on the verge of a divorce and they're falling apart and they don't love each other anymore. And at best, they may show them finding the very merit to love again.
That is my story.
Yeah. Just like, give us some more stories like that, where they actually work together to solve the problem, not because the thing is facing them, and not that their relationship is falling apart.
Yes,
let's show the benefits of marriage. Let's show that there are good marriages out there.
We probably will see more of that as the millennials age. As a 90s kid, like I know growing up, like a lot of the big popular things like kind of echo our growth rate. So I was ahead of the curve. I married young. So like seeing all the people my age now, like, and they like the Captain Marvel stuff because that's more their pacing, where it's I need to be this strong, independent woman right now, and I need to remember who I am, and push forward against all these oppression sources all around me and stuff. Like I kind of get that, but I think as we age, and especially the ones that are able to kind of, like you said, we draw from our own experience and like at least the inspiration of our own experiences, we'll see a lot more of that.
I watched an interesting, I think it was actually Chinese, based on a Chinese web novel. And I'm trying to remember what it was called. Love 020.
I saw that.
It's good. I think it lays out kind of a alternate source of tension for like an established couple. Obviously, they get together at the beginning, but instead of the two of them facing internal tension, all of the tension comes from outside their relationship. And the question is not, will they survive, right? Will their relationship survive? But it's that, how will they persevere? How will they come out looking good together, right? like this power couple, and make all of their detractors feel bad for picking on them. I think that sort of trust in that established relationship is something that we haven't really seen in a lot of fiction, and I'd like to see more of that too.
Well, like I said, like our people our age, like where we generally are in our life, we are looking for people for the next step. Like when I was younger, I love the romance stuff just because I know what I wanted when I was younger. I wanted that happily ever after. I'm married now, so I'm like, oh, what do I need next? I need kids. So
what happens when a couple with happily ever after has their own kids and those kids have a misadventure, but the parents are brought into the misadventure too? It's okay for a protagonist not to be an orphan.
Right.
Exactly.
Really?
Yeah,
it's
my
okay for
kids are enjoying the Wingfeather saga right now, and that's very much in line with that. So,
I
But still,
keep
the
hearing
dad
about that. I
is
haven't
gone
tried
in
it
that
yet.
story, though.
what is it?
You
The
got to
Wing-
read it to see what happens in the Wingfeather saga. But
I can tell you, I was very PO'd with how that ended. I started that as an audiobook and then had to immediately go buy the next 4 books in a row. And when I got to the end of the last book, I was royally PO'd at how that series ends. Just warning. But even in the Wingfeather saga, the father's gone. His echoes are there. He was a good, strong father. He was a good role model for the kids, but he's not there. So it's like, I guess maybe that does mirror so many stories where the father is gone, and I think that maybe that does mirror a lot of.
Your grandpa's still there, so
yeah, I liked how he introduced the grandfather as a strong male character for them, and so they had the stability, in a sense.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Well, my kids have started watching Lord of the Rings, the extended versions, on their own, so I don't have to worry too much about them.
They're leaving the nest. Starting to fly.
Yes. Well, my daughter got mad at me today. She's like, "I'm not watching Return of the King with you today."
I mean, I don't mind if romance is the B plot, but I don't want it to be the sole focus. If I wanted that, I'd be watching more soap operas.
Exactly. There's plenty of bodice rippers out there for that sort of story, and even the inspirational version of it. If you're Christian like I am, so I don't read anything like that level. But there's still plenty.
Into the sun.
Yeah, my mother, when Harlequin Romance began doing the Love Inspired line, which is their clean inspirational series, so she was reading all those books, and you'd get those in every month. You'd get 3 books every month. It didn't take long for I'm looking at this and going, it's the exact same story, different character. This guy's name is different. His background might be a little bit different. Her name is different. Okay, so it's this story is now set in New York. This story is now set in the countryside of Iowa. This story is set in Texas. It's the same story over and over and over.
This entire
So
series, and all the things that are based on it are set in Amish Town.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, I mean, the traditional publishers too, they have this big problem with like over commercialization. So like, it's like you said, like it doesn't matter where you go to Olive Garden, you know, like if you go to Olive Garden in California, it's the same thing as Olive Garden in Rhode Island, you know.
Mhm.
And with indies, I think you have a lot more opportunity for like mom and pop type tastes, and I think that's probably like part of the appeal for me, is like, because yeah, I can go to an Olive Garden whenever I want.
Right.
But you know, like so the next town up just opened this like new ice cream place, and like ice cream's expensive. But yeah, I just went there and spent $30 so I could get an Oreo cone. An Oreo cone with 2 scoops of stuff and all these just different flavors, and it's like, yeah, that's what I want. I want everything.
So that, I mean, that does come down to be the question, like in helping my husband try to sell his books and trying to get his books out there is, you talk to people and you find that people do want, they want the different, they want the new, they get tired of the same old all the time. But yet, how does an indie author supposed to connect to their audience? That's been the biggest question we've been wrestling with for the last year. It's like, we know there's people out there who want this kind of story. How do we connect to, especially when you've got the problem with the tradpub is got these blinders on, and even going to different conferences we've had that's supposed to be geared for writers. It's like they keep funneling new writers and wannabe writers and new authors into the same trough, onto the same rails. Or this is what the market is, and this is what this is. So if you want to succeed, this is where you got to go. It's like, how could indies break free from that and find their audience?
You kind of sometimes got to change venue, even if it's something you might not think of at first, like the web novel place or Royal Road. Even though it doesn't look like it targets the kind of books you're looking for, there's all sorts of readers there. But they've just changed where they're gathering at, because older readers are aging out and they're not all congregating on Facebook and stuff anymore.
Or finding what other interests they have, like with Anne. Just one day reached out to me, was like, hey, do you want to come on my Knitters podcast? And I was like, yeah, absolutely, let's talk books.
Yeah. I personally
saw that episode. I really liked that episode.
It was fun.
Yeah.
I personally found that podcasts are really good ways to sell books, because like I am my book's best advocate in that sort of way. It's like, oh, you seem to be a relatively well put together person who, if you have some deep psychological trauma, you've hidden it well enough that I can help you. So it's like, oh, maybe your books will be the same way. And it's like, you know what, they are. So
so you look functional. I want to read your books. Great.
Well, it's the DNA of familiar but different. So this will give you a thrilling experience. It'll satisfy you in a way that you've never before dreamed. So
some of us have a difficult time being a salesperson for our own books. I find it much easier to talk.
You know what I do? I read all my terrible reviews and I'm like, okay, this person obviously has some kind of tragic backstory. And I just, on some level, I see other people selling them their own books, and I'm like, I've read that book. That book is actually terrible. If they can lie about that book, I should be able to lie about mine. And personally, so Katie's read The Divine Space Pirates, and like I said, it's this dystopian future where there's basically a resistance crew that's circling the world, and that's pretty much like dystopian stuff with space pirates. I love it. And selling that isn't hard for me anymore, but it was when I first wrote it, because it's like, this is all my angst about the future, and I don't know if anybody's really gonna love me, and I don't know what I'm doing. And now it's been like 6 years, and I'm like, you know what, that was actually a really solid series. I've got great characters, I've got fun and plot twists, and yeah, maybe it'll help you through some of your existential angst over election year. So sometimes when enough time has passed, it's easier to sell things. So
I guess I'll have to ask. I got to get off of here in a little bit. I'm in Eastern Standard Time, and I do work a full-time job. So, I should probably get off of here before too long. I don't know if you have anybody else waiting in the wings or not, Katie.
Doesn't look like it. I'm sure that Anne or somebody would like to jump back on if
So
there's a space. So
I'll take off. I'll say bye.
Oh,
Said-
thank you.
give you
thank
guys a
you.
chance. Give you guys a chance to get a word in edgewise without me talking all over everybody.
thank
No,
you
no,
for
Well,
coming.
I'll
I
take
usually-
over. So.
I have to mute myself so I don't just hack up a lung. And because must kill Spencer, must kill Anita, must kill all those bad female characters that I wish to launch into the sun and never see again.
Oh, yeah, you can hear my husband coughing over here in the background. He's still coming off the flu, so the muting goes in. But I guess it's the last thing I will say, that if you do want something unique and different, I'm pitching for my husband, MD Boncher. He writes the Dream Nebula, Tales from the Dream Nebula, and the Viking series, the Fiannawolf saga. You can find him at resonantmedia.art or anywhere books are sold. MD Boncher, Boncher. So
Thank you so much for coming.
thank you. Okay. Bye.
Bye.
All right, Anne's going to refill her drink before she joins us again. So another question that was asked was by the Free Narnian. He asked, what are some of the motivations of a female character that a female character would have for going on an adventure or taking on the role of a heroine? I think this is a particularly interesting question because there's been, for many years, the idea of like a heroine's journey to contrast the hero's journey, it being some form of more relational or emotional journey. So I was interested in hearing what you guys thought about the idea of a heroine's journey, and then in particular, what you think a female character's motivations would be for maybe progressing along the normal hero's journey line.
I wouldn't mind seeing more brave moms going out there to protect their kids, like in Secret of Nymph, because motherhood has been downgraded to, oh, you're just there to be a baby incubator. Try telling that to my mom's face.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do think the heroine's journey, so-called, I mean, there's a lot of times that I've seen it done and done well is there's the relational aspect. There is a person that they particularly care about who's in danger or that needs to be rescued, and your heroine is the only person who can do it for whatever reason. And yeah, I think that's a pretty successful and normal motivation.
I actually, so like on that topic, okay, so like I kind of have sources of like getting stuff to Hollywood sometimes, and one of the things I sent them was I wrote out like different, like a whole idea about how to make the live action Moana movie a lot better. And I even said, instead of Moana going out because she's just drawn to the ocean, I said, have her brother be the person that got swallowed by the sea and she wants to go look for him. That would still make it better. It would appeal to boys and girls. And it would explain a lot more, like, especially if like what's his face, The Rock's character was like played a part in like her brother's disappearance.
Yeah.
See, that fixes so much of that movie that I hate.
And you could have a side plot with whatever he's doing when he's lost. So you could kind of bounce back and forth.
Exactly. It ties it. And that's one thing with the live actions that, like, if they're going to do them, they should have done them a lot more smartly.
I was
Like
perfectly
Cinderella with
fine.
his plot.
But no, I already sent that. I sent the script treaty in and everything. I'm like, they have it, so if they steal it now,
No, I was
I have it on
perfectly
record that I can sue them.
fine. No,
All
I
the
was
years for Hollywood.
perfectly fine with Mulan's motivation to be to protect her dad in the animated movie.
Yeah.
That was adorable.
Family oriented. Yeah. And then at the end to be like, yeah, I'm going home now. Like,
I will say, like, women in general too, like, part, like, the thing I like kind of especially hate about Captain Marvel is that, like, all women, especially I think women, that we wonder where we belong. Like, we want to know who we are and what we're here for. And I get that men feel like that too, but like they usually do it by doing stuff. We do it by connecting things together. Like we are more connection oriented, which makes us more relationship oriented. But like even in one of my novels is like I have a character that gets chosen for this assignment, and it's basically because she knows a bunch of stuff, you know, and it's like not related stuff.
No, that's what gets me about a lot of these female characters in so-called strong woman character where don't need no man. They don't protect their social circle whatsoever at all. What the heck is their malfunction?
Well, it doesn't make any sense, right? And there's lots of jokes on the internet about girls backstabbing each other, et cetera, et cetera. But like, if you have a group of girls and one of them is hurt, everybody gathers and like protects her and takes care of her and talks, you know, it just doesn't make any sense for one, you know, strong woman to just be rude to everybody all the time to prove how superior she is. Like, that's just not how women talk to each other.
Well, I mean, we can be kind of catty. I like
absolutely.
the mean girls type.
Yeah, there is the opposite of, you know, gathering around and, oh, I'm so sorry, but there's also the sort of cruelty, the sort of stench of failure of, oh, I don't want to be around that. Like, oh, you crashed and burned. Well, I don't want to let that.
Well, it's a very much an in and out thing, right?
Right.
If you are part of the social group that and you can make it seem very flippant, right? Like high school, right? The clique, then you're kind of protected by the group. But if you're out, then there's that more of that cattiness. And if you were in and you've somehow betrayed the group, right? But all of that is not like that sort of
reductionist.
Yeah. Thank you. It's not like one person kind of being like isolationist strength by standing out from everybody else in the same way that male heroes are necessarily.
I'll say this. So like my example I give for this stuff is like my husband is my cupcake and I am the icing on top. And I love that analogy because like I'm here to make your life better. You know, I like the cupcake part better personally. But my kids like the icing better. So that's how I view like male-female relationship. And when we a couple years ago when COVID hit, we got our bikes and we would go biking as a family through our neighborhood. We figured we were on wheels, we'd be fast enough, nobody would be able to catch us. And my husband would always go super fast and like go ahead of us, and he would lead the charge. And I would stay behind and I would make sure that nobody got left behind. And I think that's a good kind of example of like a possible female journey is like you have to be able to help people that you feel like are left behind. And I think that's part of the reason why a lot of leftist progressives tend to co-opt like the heroine's journey as some kind of activism ploy, because that's what we are, you know, we're really good at. You know, we're really good at finding people that are by themselves and helping them. And that's kind of like using that quality.
that and we still are programmed a bit differently due to hormones that go directly into our brains. Funny how that works.
What?
Well,
biological differences.
Yeah.
Well, I think there's also a little difference between, I guess you could call it hard power and soft power. Excuse me. Where it's like you just think, and both men and women kind of have both of these things. but that it's like hard power, like, oh, well, I don't like what you said, so I'll fight you, or I enforce the law, or only the person at the top is in charge, and stuff like this. And they kind of give these things to female characters that, oh, Captain Marvel is the best because she can fight anybody and win. And you forget these sort of soft power elements, like kind of the difference being like, oh, you know, you have like a little kid, like, just wait till dad gets home. And if he gets afraid of a spanking, that could be like the sort of hard power. That's your comeuppance. That's my punishment, or any other punishment. But the soft power is, oh, but dad's disappointed in me. It's the, oh, I better call my mom before I get home because she will be upset. And there will be a consequence in her being upset. And I don't want that. It's the, well, I might say something publicly, but that would upset my friend, so I won't. Those sort of soft power elements. That's like, there's some strength in that too. There's a, wait, I can't do this because of some relational reason. Or if I do this to someone else relationally, again, it's the consequence thing that happens, not necessarily from the big action, but the little intricacies of relationships. And it's like, oh, well, those intricacies don't matter. Like, no, those can have really big implications. Even, you know, I guess you consider like medieval court dramas, you know, where you have these, you know, everyone's backbiting in court and who, you know, is against who. You're like, no, that is a lot of soft power implications. Now you could say like, oh, if there was an assassination, that would be, again, more the hard power, more the violent act. But they both have effects in your stories, and the kind of soft power elements tend to be the more female realm. Not all the time, but it's that you find more of that in female stories. I don't know.
Well, it's true in real life too, though. Is like you can, it's like launching an attack. You send the men into do the attack, and then you have the women write the propaganda. I'm already in a few lists, I'm sure. So.
And I don't know, the women tend, again, not all the times, but the more morality enforcing thing for good and for evil. So you find that in a lot of groups too.
Well, I mean, I think this is why, like, talking about like instead of like heroine as like the hero, like women as the villain, I want to see better women villains. So,
like Captain Marvel, yes.
I mean, most of these postmodern characters are good motivation for what you can give for a villain, because most of the villains, they don't need a sob story. They're just evil for the sake of being evil, and they're psychopathic for the sake of being psychopathic. They just want to kill you just because they want to kill you.
They want to watch you bleed, count your heartbeats till you're dead.
Like Maleficent, who was mad that they didn't invite her to a party, right? Like,
oh, speaking of that, I was thinking about this today, and I don't know if perhaps this theory is entirely crap, and if so, please mock me at your leisure. But I was thinking today about, you know, so Lord of the Rings, you basically only have two women, more if you include Galadriel and the rest, but really you have Eowyn and you have Arwen. And I was thinking today about, you know, it's like, okay, those are indeed good female characters, but that both of their enemies, I mean, yes, you have Sauron and the Ring and these armies of orcs. Those are kind of, you know, number one issue for both of them. But like in their own little story arcs, both of their enemies are time. That you have Eowyn, who feels that she's wasting away as the world is moving on without her. And Arwen is coming up with the issue of, no, she's staying on and everything else is kind of rotting away. And that you tend to have more of that element in female stories too, of that being an issue. I don't know. And you have, you know, Maleficent too is sort of the end time consequence finally coming to eat you, with Sleeping Beauty in her 16th birthday.
Also in Snow White, I mean, the queen didn't want to age, right?
Right.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, Leslie.
Oh, no, I was just going to say that she was one of the quintessential just evil villains, women villains, you know.
Madonna doesn't want to age either. Oh God.
Oh gosh.
I think that's actually
He's
a really
wrong.
good point.
I actually have a book where the enemy is literally time. So
Oh wow, see.
yes, so it's my One Flu series. So it's got some interesting stuff in it, but it's steampunk, so it should be fun.
That's a really interesting concept of time as a female character's main antagonist, I guess.
I
And-
feel it every day. I look at my husband and I'm like, you know, you got about 70 more years till you die. Well,
in
I'm not
aging,
even kidding. I weep over it.
Does it have to be aging related, or are there other time related things that would weigh on a female character? Or is it just aging?
I think time as a relationship is tricky for women because we feel compelled a lot of times to connect things, and so we have to be efficient about it. Like, am I using my time wisely? I think procrastination
Oh gosh, yeah.
and
Yeah, yeah.
projectionism and projectionism and procrastination tend to be my worst flaws as a writer.
And not that it isn't a thing for male characters either. There's,
right.
you know,
I think we just feel it more because it is something that, like, it's supposed to be a curse from the fall of Eden, and it is more emotionally weighty, and I think that's where women tend to feel it more.
Well, not to wander into game theory at all, right?
Use my time wisely.
But like, if what makes a man attractive is more about character and what he does, he can continue to do those things much, much longer than a woman can continue to be beautiful, which is the main factor in a female's attractiveness. Not to be depressing.
Oh my goodness.
Well, and I think that is, I mean, that's societally, that is the undertone, is that your usefulness as a female has a lot to do with what you look like in your age and less to do with your intrinsic value as a human, the things that you can offer from your mind or from how you care for others. And that is the undercurrent that needs to be fought. But I think provides great villains for certain women because they're grasping at straws, at the wrong thing, and it's a hopeless battle, but it turns them into this, this actually compelling villain.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, kind of like the Madonna that she keeps doing a plastic surgery thing to make her into a parable. That it's like, well, you can see it in her face, and it's not good.
Well, maybe she's just living up to Imperial Girl standards. So.
Right. It's like, oh, honey. But
well, if to look at it a little bit differently, if we apply the same sort of ideas about things that make women attractive, as far as like things that we do, having kids also has a time limit on it, right? The idea of doing a role as wife and mother, that mother role has a limited amount of time that can be executed. So there's time as far as like beauty, but there's also time as far as like the role that you play in your life.
A good mother will make herself irrelevant.
Right.
Like, so for what it's worth.
Yep.
Look, I don't need to be here to do your laundry. You can do your laundry now. Go do your laundry now.
But that almost implies that after motherhood, what comes after motherhood, then that time frame you're talking about.
Right.
Like,
grandmotherhood.
Okay.
Sure. Well, and
I think grandmotherhood.
What comes after it is change again, which is frightening, right? All changes.
Oh, I'm gonna run for politics. So my last name is Johnson, so I'm gonna run as Mrs. Johnson, and my campaign slogan is gonna be "How hard can it get?" So
Perfect.
perfect. How hard can it be? And I'll start off with, I'll do a whole Sojourner Truth thing where it's like, how hard can it be to go to Washington, do what you're supposed to do while not scamming off the taxpayers? So
Be prepared to relive the movie called Mr. Smith Goes to Washington.
So yes, you thought, oh gosh, what was that lady from The Graduate? You thought that lady was bad? You ain't seen nothing from Mrs. Johnson.
Well, guys, we are at 11:13, going an hour and a half here. So, do you guys want to give final comments? And we'll
Can you guys tell me some about your books? Because I've never met any of you besides Katie.
Okay, I'll start. So my name's Kaylena Radcliff. I'm the author of the Elmness Chronicles. Those 3 books out right now, and I'm working on the 4th. It's a young adult dystopian fantasy series. So it was similar to some of the stuff that you write. And yeah, I write broadly speculative and fantasy with some horror elements, as Katie has seen in the Periapsis Christmas anthology.
Oh yeah, so Katie's got to hawk those books over here.
Yeah, my stuff is just on my blog and on Royal Road right now. It's a superhero space opera where emphasis on actually having superheroes that want to be there, unlike Captain Manpants.
Oh, I'm actually gonna say I'm really happy that you joined because I don't think I've ever seen you on any podcast. So it's nice to meet you. I know
I've had to try to get this microphone working properly. I mean, I still got to buy a new one, but yeah, because it has having bad feedback for a while.
We did a book club, Fiannawolf and I, 2-3 years ago now, and we were both like basic mics, basic, like she didn't have her camera on. I had and it was like really bad color.
and I was also dying from coof.
Yep.
my lungs are about to fall out.
Oh, you got the 100-day cough now. So it's good that you're keeping up on pandemic.
Yes, bronchitis, huzzah! Because again, everybody, other stuff still exists out there, not just coof.
Oh well, we like to make it big and sound important. So.
Leslee, would you like to?
Yes, Leslee, what do you write?
Sure. So I have a fantasy series. It's kind of a metaphysical, kind of mystical fantasy series called Kumasagi. There's 4 books. The 4th book just came out last year. Here's the try to get it for the camera. So working on the 5th book now.
Where'd you get the title from?
What's that?
Where'd you get the title from?
So the Kumasagi is kind of the job title of the main character. I don't have the other book handy. It has him on the cover. So he is actually, it's kind of it takes place on a different planet from ours, and it's a semi-aquatic society. So they it's a race that used to be aquatic, but now they live on land. And his job is to kind of guide souls back to. There's a skyfish that it's it's really hard to explain. So it's his job title. He is the Kumasagi, and then there's an older one called the Mahasagi, who their job is to guide the souls of the dead to the afterlife. And so he's
inspired by Japanese lore. The name's not Japanese to me.
It's actually Indian, inspired by Indian and Tibetan, because I've traveled there and stuff like that. So,
well, tomorrow somebody's going to mistake me for Canadian for this. So,
yeah, some people think it's like, I guess, Native American Indian, because Kumasagi sounds like Kimosagi, but it's not that. It is actually based on like sort of Indian culture, even though they live on a different planet. Just stuff I picked up from traveling there and as well. And all
Space
the
Whale
women.
of Souls. Got it.
What's that?
It's the Space Whale of Souls. I'm there.
Yeah.
I'm with
It actually, well, it is. They call it the skyfish. They actually worship it because so here's the thing. The skyfish drops a soul into a sacred lake where there's pods, and the women are born from those pods. So all the women in this society are incubating in these pods in a lake, and the soul comes down from the skyfish and joins with the body, and then they're born fully grown. So all the women are coming from a sacred lake, and the men that they're divers, they go and they help the women come out of the water. There's a holy woman who kind of mind melds with them to give them cognition. And so it's sort of a different way of reproduction in society than we have.
Actually, kind of reminds me of 12 Kingdoms, that all the babies came from fruit that grew on the tree.
Oh, there you go.
Yep.
Yeah.
Was your
Kingdoms?
series inspired by traveling too, Kaylena? Is it Kaylena?
Kaylena.
Sorry.
My my series was
Getting her
inspired
right
actually. I had talked to Katie about this previously. The story came from working a factory job originally, and just the soul crushing environment that I felt like I was in, because being a creative where you're sitting for 10 hours a day trying to mind machines was like not good for me.
You guys both have really interesting pictures behind you, so
yeah, those are all my Christmas cards that I haven't taken down yet. But
well,
yes,
I heard
that's
some kind
what
of Indian, so I was like, oh, it's that thing, and there's that thing, and
Which book is that, Kaylena? Because I was looking at your Amazon page today.
So it's Mouse. It's the first in the Elmness Chronicles series. So it starts with the character. She goes by the name Mouse, so she doesn't remember her name. And she's in a manufacturing facility working. And they through the journey you follow with her. Oh, there it is. You find out that they're prisoners basically, and they're being experimented on, and so she's had her memory taken and all this stuff. So then that goes from there, and then
I actually read the first 2 pages.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, I did. That's what I love about Amazon is you can just click on a free sample and start reading, see if you like it, kind of stuff. So yeah, it was pretty cool. I think she was just waking up, and just the description of like the sounds are coming, like, and I guess her, she's seeing the people with the masks and stuff. So, yeah, I like that a lot. So I was wondering if that was the one you were talking about.
Yeah. That's my main series. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yep, I just clickety click. Oh, look, I got more Kindle points. Congratulations, I'm now 4 books more on the great 5K collection on the Kindle.
5K.
That's a race.
Yes.
5,000 books.
The Couch to 5K book edition.
Yes, man, I'd be on the worst episode of The Hoarders if I got every single book I've ever read physically. The house would not function. Nope.
But how beautiful it would be.
I'm sure the people would function a lot better.
Since we made this space our designated library, we've bought a lot more books, and I'm totally here for it. So I've got my designated indie space, and I'm just going to keep collecting because I still have shelf space now that I have more shelves.
Yay.
That's good. I support this habit.
CJ,
I
did you want to talk?
Book? You should have a hard copy, and you should have a hardback copy. It's not last. That's one thing. Like having kids has taught me is like you need the Kindle version just to have the Kindle version, and then you need to have a paperback that you can travel with, and then you need a hardback that you can keep.
But the Kindle versions let me sneak in reading at work.
That too.
Oh well, the Kindle versions don't get Sharpie marker all of them for me. So
Yeah, there you go. CJ, do you want to talk about your books?
Which ones do you want to talk about?
She's super prolific, you guys. So
I've been doing this for 10 years. Nothing surprises me. The indie scene stuff, I don't go on statistics anymore just because, to sound like a real woman, statistics aren't all there is to a person, you know. I just write whatever I want and what I like, and I figure most people who know me, and that's why I said, like, I'm the bestseller of my books, because usually, like I said, people look at me and they're like, oh, you know, you've entertained me for a while for the last 2 hours. I guess I should read something and make myself feel less bad about it. It's a sunk cost fallacy thing at that point, I think. So
you're working on a spin-off series for Fat Girl, right?
yes, Fat Girl is amazing, by the way. So Fat Girl is probably my most recent horrible protagonist person. This is a series about this girl who's in high school and she wants to become a model like her mother, but her mother like left her, so she's terribly like neurotic and so there's like she gets this chance to go and be a model because of like the next America's Next Top Middle America's Next Top Middle America model show is coming to town, and she's ready to go, and she can't get there, and she accidentally eats her grandmother's radioactive donuts and becomes Fat Girl. So it's her worst fear, and
It's like a superhero story, though, right? Like that's the thing is the radioactive donut like gives her superpowers.
Yes, well, superpower. No, she's known for sitting on people by the end of the run. Is funny. So.
Actually, that reminds me, in the TV show Haven, there was this one lady that had a trouble where everything she would try to eat would turn into a chocolate cake. So that's why she ended up getting bigger as she got older. It's like, man, that's one heck of a trouble to have, because some of the characters on that show had troubles where it was just like that particular power there was a lot more negatives than positives to it. But very good show though.
I got challenged actually by it was Dave Dubrow and Paul Hare, and they were like, hey, write us an offensive story that's still funny. I'm like, okay, I can do that.
Sounds hilarious.
Yes. So but yeah, I started a spin-off series where it's and I tell people all the time, I write stuff that it's supposed to be silly and innocent, and you can take it as terribly as you want to at some level. But so I write a lot of satire, and I write a lot of fairy tales and science fiction. I have one science fiction series. I'm working on a short story that's science fiction. And I'm working on trying to finish up my Christmas fairy tale. So, but you know, I got lots of stuff. Katie's read my Divine Space Pirates, which is, like I said, it's interesting. It's a dystopian romance set, kind of in the future, where there's been like a lot of ecological fallout, and America's turned into a communist dictator. I didn't know how on point I'd be. So I'm just waiting for us to annex Canada. So that'll be the sign that I need to stop writing.
Meanwhile, in the real world, stop listening to those books. Oh dear God, it's not supposed to be a roadmap. Oh.
Yeah, well, I actually taught 1984 as an English course, like when I was teaching high school. I loved teaching it. You guys remember that game? It was like the game where you tried to like figure out who the killer was and stuff.
Mafia.
Clue?
Yeah. So I adapted Mafia to 1984, where people were the thought police, and and then the big twist ending, like not to surprise anybody, but it was everybody died in the end anyway, because you're not supposed to know who the police is, and Big Brother is me, and I get to kill everybody. So.
Just
at that point,
that
was the highlight of my teaching career. After that,
I bet that was fantastic.
We have a case of the rocks did it. The end.
Oh man.
And
were your students so angry at you after you did that, though?
they kind of understood the book better. So
Sure.
What
I
age
was
group?
that was something that when I was growing up I hated. It was like also like this is where life is going, and we get either the choice of killing ourselves like Brave New World, or we get the privilege of worshiping Big Brother because that's double plus good. And I'm like, no, there's got to be a third way, at least a third way. We can't be that uncreative.
Mhm.
One would hope.
Yeah,
Leslie
so-
was trying to ask,
oh,
how
sorry.
old were those kids that you were
Um,
teaching it?
So I graduated college early, and I was 20, 22, and they were 16.
22 teaching 16-year-olds,
Yep.
1984.
Yes.
Yep.
So it wasn't the worst I thought to be.
To be
The worst-
honest, 1984 would probably been a step up from what I was forced to read in high school.
The worst book I taught was The Kite Runner. I hate that book. I hate it. I hate it for like multiple more reasons than ever too. After not teaching it anymore.
Also, this one's for Tale of Two Cities.
Oh, come on. Tale of Two
Classic.
Cities is phenomenal.
I
You don't
Cliff
even
Notes. Cliff Notes. 100%. I love A Christmas Carol, but I hate Tale of Two Cities.
Christmas Carol is Dickens' only good work. I'll
Whoa.
stand by that.
Whoa. I'm going to have to leave. I'm sorry.
Before you shill your stuff?
Okay, fun fact about Dickens though is I think for a lot of the things he wrote, he did serials. So like he got paid per word. So he would just write as many words as possible for each edition. So he would get paid more. Like,
Oh,
yeah.
Alexander Dumas had the same thing with.
I respect the grind.
First off, he was a genius. Secondly, he did have 10 kids. So
Thirdly, he
That explains
actually had
everything.
lots of affairs, so I disrespect it.
that's fair. That's a
He
fair.
is the original trying to affect social change with a novel guy. So
He was actually
Wasn't Harry
good
or
at
Bridget
it,
Stowe
and
like?
he
Was
actually
he,
had
though?
real characters. Like his characters were like the farther I go in life, I'm like, my goodness, Dickens was right about everyone.
But I also have
really?
grown worthy level for Wheel of Time and for sorry, Mr. Goodkind, but I can't stand a Sword of Truth anymore either. Holy crap! How much were you paid just to type out how many words to get to the fact that Richard had a vine in his palm? Come on, dude! Please, God, make it end.
Well, like one of my series that's inspired by literary fiction, like specifically, is Life of Pies, and it was inspired by As I Lay Dying and A Gathering of Old Men, and two things that you just don't think of when you think of pie.
Yeah.
And it's basically about this pie contest and all these different people in this small town that are affected by a murder. And I'm like, this is really good stuff, but not a lot of people are probably gonna like this because it's short. But I mean, like, there's a chapter in As I Lay Dying where it's just this kid talking, and he's like, my mother's a fish, and that's the whole chapter. And I'm like, I don't think I can charge 99 cents for just that. So I have to write a little bit more.
Anne, would you like to show your stuff?
Oh well, I have a channel.
What are you knitting now? Or are you crocheting?
Knitting. I'm knitting a quilt square.
You're still doing the quote.
That's right. I will do the quilt for a very long time. I have a channel. It's called Politically Incorrect Knitters. I do a show with Miss Deplorable Knitter. We interview a lot of interesting creative people, specifically covering the quote knitting wars, which is people getting canceled and businesses and destroyed and stuff in the knitting world. It's a good time. And by good time, I mean it's kind of a terrible time, but it makes for good content. And but no, it's a good show. I like it.
Come on.
And then we do a live show every other Tuesday, which is a panel show like this one, where we hang out and have fun.
Nice.
I'll get my giant monster ones out if you want.
Yeah.
When I actually learned to knit when I was a kid, and what my biggest like if I had a lot of money to waste, I would totally do this thing. I used to make sushi roll blankets.
Oh yeah.
You would do like the black, gray, green stuff on the outside, like for a long time, and then you would do a lot of the rice, and then you could mix it in with the sesame seeds, like just for a different. And then at the end, you had like these really funny, like not just like it wasn't just yarn; it was like the velvet yarn or like the poofy stuff, and that would be like your inside. So I made a lot of cucumber rolls, and it would be like you roll up a sushi. So trademarking that.
My sister crochets, and I told her that I was going on this knitting podcast, and she was like, "What?" Then recently we got together, and she was like, "How was that?" I was like, "It was great." And I started telling her about it. She's like, "Did you learn to knit?" I was like, "No." She's like, "You go back to those girls and tell them they have failed." How can you be on a knitting podcast and not learn to knit?
Well, we did try to teach someone on podcast once before. It was the same gal I mentioned at the beginning, the Birdie Rose, and it is not easy to teach someone how to knit through video call. Like it's a lot of hand motions, and poor gal was just not getting it. And we're like, it's okay, we won't do this live on the internet. We can like have a little private talk, or go to YouTube. I mean, we're on YouTube, but go to YouTube separately and watch other people's hands. This isn't working.
So yeah, my sister had criticism for you.
Oh, well, that's fine.
She's usually criticism is a love language between siblings.
Yeah.
I take it she didn't watch the episode.
Oh no. My family has zero interest in what I do.
You know, on one hand, it's a good thing to have your family interested. On the other, you're like, I don't want you to know.
Yeah.
I mean, I do, but I don't. Just
Good point.
If I knew she was going to listen to this, maybe I wouldn't have said anything about her.
Just bury it in the lives of the internet.
Yeah.
Nobody can watch them all. She won't know.
Yeah. No, like I say all the time things like, hey, David and I are putting together another Christmas anthology. Oh, you're doing that again? Yep.
That.
Sounds like my Christmas. So are you still writing? Yes. Doesn't matter how much I write. I write a lot too. So.
I rarely get questions. That's how little everybody cares.
I'll get one. That's the only one I get.
It's okay.
Are you still doing it?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and this is part of the reason I think I write stupid things like Fat Girl. It's like, oh yeah, I wrote this girl. I was just finishing up with my Fat Girl superhero novel series. Yeah. It's about this fat girl that gets to sit around and people that eat radioactive donuts so her grandmother can save face in front of the government.
And unlike Faith from another comic book company, there's actually a point to her being fat, most likely.
Yes, there is. Sort of. Yeah. Well, I mean, even with my comic book, you ordered my comic, didn't you? So it's like, yep, I'm the whitest white girl out here. I can write a better black superhero character than Marvel.
That's right.
The biggest criticism I'm with that is it's too wordy, and it's like, I get that. I'm a novelist.
Yeah.
But it's just the difference between people who actually want to tell a story rather than like, this is my soapbox. Statistically, I have to add this and that to be socially relevant for what is current year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If I don't have X, Y, and Z, then are they even really black? Like that kind of stereotypical.
Oh, and that's usually, if I get any pushback, what I'll say is like, what do you mean by black then? So. So.
Okay. I think everybody's talked about their stuff. Other like this is my stream and I do stuff.
Yeah, Katie, what are you doing?
Meanwhile, I will devise a way to throw all the girl bosses into the sun.
So yeah, I did David and I put together the Christmas anthologies. I edit them. And he does all of the making it happen using code. which is the real superpower here.
Men and women work best when they work together.
Anne has hers a lot closer than I have mine.
I
She
do.
would hold
I
them up
came
again.
prepared. See?
Oh.
There's
So Kaylena is in both. And let's see.
I will
the
get
first-
you one someday.
The
I'll have
first
a
one
great
has 5 stories and the second one has 6, and they're all by indie authors that I've read at least one thing that they've written and I've reviewed on my site. So it's basically another, like, here, cool authors, go buy their other stuff.
That's awesome.
We're still reading Paladin Unbound, which we started in December, but everyone's been too busy. So we will be doing the Iron Age book club sometime in the next few weeks. As soon as we pick a date. I am going to be posting soon in my Gilded, kind of as I read it, thoughts. So if people want to read it alongside me and reciprocate with their thoughts, just let me know. Another
Don't be talking to the void.
right.
We do that enough on our own.
Right. Another upcoming thing that I am planning is I'm currently trying to read this. What About Evil? And I'm going to be talking about it on my stream with Patrick, who's in the chat. This is Scott Christensen talks about the sovereignty of God, in particular in the context of God as storyteller, which I thought would be interesting to talk about on stream with somebody who knew more about theology than I do.
Which does sound more engaging than, oh my goodness, they're subverting God again.
Right.
It's just like the evil Superman trope. It just won't die.
Evil's not very creative, I don't think.
Yeah. All right, guys. Thank you so much for joining me, and thank you to everybody who watched and participated in the chat. I tried to keep an eye out, so I hope I didn't miss any questions from people. But I appreciate you guys, even though I didn't have the opportunity to be as active and bringing people's thoughts up to the screen. I appreciate you guys being here and tuning in. My website is periapsispress.com, and I review indie sci-fi and fantasy books from authors like some of the ones that have joined me this evening. And I encourage you to read indie and review stuff yourself.
Goodness knows we need more people getting the word out for us.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And even try things from before you were born, because you will be surprised how much everything took from Lensman and Captain Future. For many things I enjoyed. Hi, Babylon 5. Wow, you really did take a lot from Lensman. And hi, Fallout series. You took a lot from Captain Future there, especially with like some of the retro tech fun with brains in a jar.
I will say, like, I love older work just because it's so much more smarter.
More smarter.
Yeah, more smarter.
Goblin again.
I am 25% literate. I'm getting there.
If I had to read everything in order to be literate, yeah, I'm not. So
I think it's important to read books that help you figure out how to be a better human in general. Like, I mean, like they say, reading more novels will make you more empathetic. Obviously, if you read just about a girl bosses all the time, you're not going to become more empathetic, you know. And I think that's something that it shows you human nature so much better. And it's almost like I talk about it when I talked about harder books with younger kids. I would say it's like getting a vaccine. And I know that sounds bad in today's world. To some people specifically, it sounds bad, but it's like, it's a small way of introducing yourself to the complexity of the world around you in a way that's palpable, and you have people that will talk with you about those specific things. Because one of the biggest problems that we have in general is that when we talk about ideas, like if we disagree about something ardently, vehemently, is that we make it personal really quick.
Mhm.
And that is never the goal of actual discussion. Is that's arguing, and so it makes for a very good, like almost like safe space. Another kind of controversial word. It makes for a good safe space to talk about things that you're either worried about, you're interested in, you want to learn more about, or you have something to say about. That's one way to express yourself. And
Yeah,
like
you
I
can
said,
talk about very personal things in a way that is outside of yourself by talking about characters and the things that happen to them.
Mhm. I'll say this. Okay, so like when I went to my master's degree stuff, I actually had to write like a novel, and this novel is not published, by the way. And I wrote a character that was just like me, but slightly different. And everybody in the class that critiqued it hated her.
Oh no.
Oh, no.
And I've always remembered that experience. I'm like, nobody likes you.
Yeah.
Oh,
Ouch.
So that's why I don't write any self-insert characters anymore.
Learned your lesson.
Well, that's why you take pieces of yourself and like, okay, I'll give this character my bad sense of humor. This one's going to get my worry about this. I'll put some traits of other people into this person. And if I really don't like them, I'll be like, okay, I really hate the modern news cycle. So I'll make half the bad guys like a really ridiculous version of what you find really annoying about somebody.
Well, I don't think the villain in the piece was somebody in my family. And everybody loved her story. And I was just like, you gotta be kidding me.
Also, it's probably near the time where people were like, oh, I want to sympathize with the villain more.
Well, if that's the case, I know they were wrong even way back then. So.
All right, I'm sorry. It's almost 1 o'clock here. I have to go to bed. So
Yeah, let's call it. Thank you guys again. Have a great night.
thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.